right, let's sit back and relax, take a deep breath. We're going to have a good time tonight. And here we go in 3, 2, 1. Welcome to Never Too Late, Real Stories of Reinvention, where we share the stories of dream chasers, career changers, and people with the courage to reinvent themselves. I'm Eric Cooter, and each episode I sit down with someone who's taken a leap, discovered a new path, or found joy in the unexpected. These conversations are about hope, resilience, and reminds all of us that it's never too late to chase your dreams. Well, now that's behind us, and we can begin our conversation. I am overjoyed to spend this episode with an old friend of mine. He's not old; our time has been old that we've been friends. A little both, yeah. But McKenna Houston, who I have known now for 23 years. We probably spent the last 20 years just kind of following each other's lives by social media, most likely. But this is the first time we've actually had a great conversation. And I just want to welcome you, McKenna. Thanks for being on the podcast with me.
Well, thank you, Eric. It's a joy to be here. Great to see you, and I look forward to the conversation.
Me too, my friend. So McKenna, before we get started, I don't want to steal your thunder, but maybe you can kind of share with our listeners how you and I met 23 years ago, and I'll let you go from there.
Yeah, so 20 plus years ago, I was living in Florida, working as a golf professional at a local club. I was in the summers up in Western Pennsylvania, where I'm from, and I always had a curiosity about aviation and wanting to fly. My cousin was a lead captain of the Blue Angels, and I used to watch him at air shows and was always enamored by aviation. And I would drive by the airport, the Naples airport, frequently on the way to work, and I would see planes, coming and going. And I was like, maybe I should just go try that one day. And I went to the local flight school and did an intro flight. It was actually with a different instructor for the intro flight, but I saw Eric there. And the intro flight went really well, and I said, you know what, I really want to try this. And I was fortunate enough to get paired up with you, Eric, and we started flight training. And I really dove in, really enjoyed it. It was hard, it was nerve-wracking at times, but it's something I really wanted to pursue, and did that several lessons or lots of lessons in time with Eric, and ended up getting my private license. And then flew socially with some friends off and on, a couple lessons here and there. But that's really where our friendship, took off, and we've remained good friends ever since then, despite multiple, career changes, moves around the country. But we've always stayed in touch, and I really enjoy the friendship.
Me too, McKenna. I tell you, I was looking back to some of that history that I shared with you earlier. But before that, I want to. One thing is, you mentioned, did you say it was your brother that was the lead captain with the Blue Angels?
Uh, no, my cousin.
Your cousin
Yeah, cousin.
was the
Yeah, he was a
lead.
good bit older than me.
Yeah.
Yeah, he grew up in the Navy. He went to the Navy right out of college, to flight school, flew F-18s, carriers, did that for a while. And interesting. He told me he applied to the Blue Angels several times, was
Uh-huh.
rejected a couple times, and then finally, got the offer. And for that time, it was for the lead role, which they call the boss. The
The
number one
boss.
pilot who kind of leads the team and is the captain. And it's a position, if you get it, it's incredibly demanding, physically, mentally. You hold it about 4 years. It could be
Okay.
two, but I'm thinking it's four. So, yeah, he did that for a while, then went back to the Navy and was captain of a fleet, and now is actually working for a corporate aviation unit out in California.
Wow. Wow. You say he was a bit older than you, right?
I'm trying to think. When I was probably in my young 20s, 22, 23, when I was flying with you, and I would say at that time, he felt older to me, but he was probably only 38, 39. And then I think, you retire from naval aviation pretty soon after that on the
Sure.
schedule demands.
Yeah. As I've said in a lot of the other podcasts, it's interesting how people in our lives, either directly or indirectly, actually have an influence on the path that we take. And sometimes they don't even realize that they're doing it. It's just they live their lives and their courage that they have and stuff that it actually has an impact on the direction that we take. And so that's interesting. Thanks for sharing that. Thanks for
Yeah,
sharing that.
thanks. I mean, he definitely instilled some curiosity in me, but also he was always a role model growing up. I just always admired his work ethic and his professionalism.
Yeah.
He's just a great guy. Yeah.
And I think that's the great thing about these kind of conversations is I look at and I hope my life's been that, but and I know yours has in some way, and I'd like for you to maybe share some of that tonight. But we have the opportunity to actually to impact other people's lives in a positive way, especially at a time in the world where things aren't always positive. But I get to do it still as an instructor. I did it as a priest, and I'm sure in the work that you do, and I want to hear more about that, and how you've actually been a role model for others as well. I want to share a little tidbit of information here, some nostalgia. So I went back to my old logbook. I used to keep paper logbooks, but I moved everything
Yeah.
electronic, and I want to share with our listeners that the first flight that McKenna and I took together was on March 5th, 2002 in Naples, Florida. Most likely in a Cessna 172, an old Cessna 172, I'm sure.
Uh,
McKenna did something incredible. He actually soloed on April 15th, 2002. And you said, I remember it because it was
yeah, tax day,
tax
right?
day. And then he, according to the FAA records, because I don't have this in my logbook, I know when I did the check ride prep, which is 3 flights that we do to get you ready for your check ride. I know I did that on June 24th, but you actually took and got your private pilot's license on July 31st, 2002. That sounds about right,
Yeah,
right?
it's hard to believe it's been that
I know.
long. Yeah.
I know, because so much water's gone under the bridge and so many changes have happened. So before we jump into some of that with you, there's a lot of things you shared with me that I didn't even know. And my gosh, we spent so many hours together, at least 40, 50 hours together in the cockpit together years
Yeah.
ago. I do want to share, if you'll remind me, there was a time where you were learning to land the first time, and there was a little bit of something that I connected to your golfing experience that actually caused you to land. So don't let me forget that. I want to bring that back up when we talk about aviation again.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? Let's do it now. Let's do it now. So, and then I want to jump into some of your history and everything. So, McKenna and I I was teaching McKenna. We would normally leave Naples, right? And we go up to Immokalee because it's a less
Yeah.
busy
Or
airport.
Marco. Yeah.
And McKenna was not unusual. He was a really good student. I mean, he caught on really well, and a lot of that, if you're someone who has a good command of your body, like an athlete, or you're an engineer or something like that, you usually do pretty well in flight training. And McKenna was no exception to that. But like everybody, including me, McKenna was having a little bit of a hard time learning to fly, or to land, not fly, to land the airplane, and that's
Mhm.
normal. That's normal. And I don't know if you remember this or not, but I looked at you and I said, so, and I knew you were a golf pro, and I said, McKenna, what is that moment when the club head connects to the ball, and that spot? What's that called when you have that perfect connection with the ball and the ball goes where you want it to go? And,
Yeah,
and
just that sweet spot,
the
right?
sweet spot.
Yeah.
And you may not remember this, but I remember going around the patch and I said, all right, I'm going to take the controls. You're going to be the instructor this time. And I'm going around. I said, when you think that I've hit the sweet spot in the flare, I want you to name it. That's the sweet spot. And I'm coming
Yeah.
in and I'm bringing it in, and we landed. We touched down on the mains, and the nose came down. And you right before you did that, you said, "This is the sweet spot. This is where I need to flare." And I'm like, "Great." We went around. I don't know if you remember this, but you went around and I said, "Now you teach yourself," and you did, and you landed. And it wasn't too long after that I soloed you, but it was anyway. I remember that. You may not, but those kind of
It's,
things always stand
oh,
out.
I do. Yeah. I mean, it's lots of feel there. And yeah, it was hard the first few times. I remember porpoising a couple times or
Yep.
flaring too high. And I remember one thing I always did wrong was I wasn't looking far ahead out at the horizon of the
Hmm.
runway. I would see the pavement coming up. I was like, oh, I got a flare. And then, obviously you corrected me and we changed that. But it's nerve-wracking the first few times for sure.
Yeah. But you did great. You did great. I mean, you were a great student, and
Well,
and
you got me there.
all right. right, so let's change gears a little bit. I want to, if you would, you'd sent me some information about your background. I'll just start with you grew up in Western Pennsylvania. Remember, you mentioned that earlier, and you talked a little bit about early school and some of the things that you did. You lived abroad for a while. Can you kind of talk about your experience growing up in Western Pennsylvania and how that had an influence on you to make some of the changes that you've made over your life? Yeah, can you share a little bit of that?
Sure. Yeah. So I grew up in a small town. It's called Greensburg, Pennsylvania, which is about 30 miles east of Pittsburgh. I had two sisters. I had a twin sister and an older sister. Very loving parents. Still with us today, fortunately.
Oh, wow.
But I had a very fortunate upbringing. Had a great family life. But it was kind of small town. My parents always emphasized hard work, academics. So I did pretty well in school. I was pretty social, loved playing sports, loved playing soccer. I really didn't, I liked golf, but I kind of played golf because my dad played golf and I wanted to spend time with him, as a young boy. But then as I got older, I really started to like it and start playing more. Um, but then, with academics, my parents were really strong on academics and pushing me to excel. So I actually went away to a boarding school in New England when I was 16, which at the time, a lot of people were like, why are you doing this? And my friends like, why would you go away? I'm like, it's just kind of what my parents did and um, what was kind of like written in the script. And I went away to school. My twin sister went with me to school
Wow.
up in Connecticut. Yeah, so it's nice. I wasn't going alone. And I wouldn't say I loved it, but I liked it. Made a lot of good friends, had a great education, and from there, I was. And this kind of is a theme that you're going to hear a lot tonight, but was there for several years, and I was kind of looking for a change and something different.
Mhm.
I tend to get that itch every so often, and I was fortunate that I had a French teacher that I really liked. He was the nicest guy, and he was very like encouraging and I really started to love languages, and there was an opportunity in my junior year to go abroad and live in France.
Oh, wow.
So I actually, yeah, I applied to the program, got accepted, and I'm trying to think when I was a junior in high school, I guess you're like around 17 or something.
Oh, my
And I
gosh.
told my parents, I was like, I think I'm going to go to live in France for a year. And they're like, what? What are you talking about? Like, you're at this great school, everything's going well. And I'm like, yeah, but I want something different, a new challenge, new adventure. So, yeah, this
How
is
how
next my junior
how
year.
courageous. I'm sorry, I don't want to interrupt you, but I was just going to say how courageous at that age to go live
Mhm.
abroad in France for a year. That's amazing, man. That is amazing.
Yeah, when I look back on it now, and I have a daughter who's 14, a son who's 11, and my daughter's taking French, and she really likes it. And she's like, maybe I'll do that. And I'm like, no way, you're not leaving. Like, you're way too young to go do something like that. So, in retrospect, I look back, I'm like, wow, I'm kind of surprised that I did do it. But I'm so grateful that I did. I lived with a French family. So I was totally immersed in the French culture, and they were a wonderful family, and they took really good care of me, and they were really
Wow.
passionate about me learning the language and the culture. And a real funny story for you. Um, when I got over there, like, my French wasn't that great. I took high school French, textbook French,
Right.
and they were speaking French for the moment. I got to the airport, they picked me up. They were speaking French, no English at all. And it was tough for the first couple months, just learning the language, conversing with them. And then my parents came over for Christmas break to visit.
Uh-huh.
And, we're at the dinner table at my family's house, and my parents don't speak any French. And, my dad's like trying to talk, and he's speaking in English to me. And then my French father, he was a really nice guy, his name was Bruno, just started speaking back to him in perfect English,
Oh,
no
wow.
hesitation. So they're perfectly fluent in English, but they never let me know that because they wanted me to learn French and be successful. So they
Really?
refused to speak English to me even after that. Yeah, it was always in French, which I'm forever grateful for because, I became fluent and I studied it in college. It was one of my majors. And, It was funny. Just the other day, my daughter who's taking French, her French teacher emailed me and my wife saying that my daughter could come in and take a makeup test. And I replied in French because it's kind of like riding a bike. It's one of those things once you
Yeah.
know it. So I just wrote back so now we have a side conversation going. So it's kind of fun. It's something I'm really grateful that I had that opportunity. It was really wonderful.
Oh, that's amazing. Have you since then, have you had any connection with that family? Have you maintained any kind of connection with them?
Yeah, so for the like 10 years after I left, we stayed in close contact. I would visit them every couple of years. We would
Yeah.
write, we would email. We still do a little bit on social media. I had a French brother who was several years younger than me. He lives in southern France now. We would keep in touch. We still do, not as much as I'd like to, but
Yeah.
yeah, we still keep up the connection, which is nice.
Oh, that's wonderful. Oh man, I can't imagine it. I mean, I look at my life. I was really sheltered growing up in Appalachia, in Northeast Tennessee, and those mountains. And the idea, and I took French in high school too. You probably didn't know that. Je ne sais pas. Uh, that's terrible. That's Southern French. Je ne sais pas. But the idea of living in France, I mean, at that age, that's amazing. That's amazing. And that had a
Yeah,
huge
I mean, it
impact.
taught me a lot about, yeah, independence, and I grew up quickly,
Yeah.
for sure. But yeah, it's something I'm really grateful for.
Now, have you and your family been back to France since then? With
My
your
wife and I have. I really want to take the kids. We haven't had a chance yet, but my wife and I have visited several times.
I can imagine that that experience really had it kind of shaped, your own curiosity and your own sense of who you were. Can you talk a little bit about that? And how did that?
Yeah, for sure. Especially the curiosity, you know, like I was growing up in Western Pennsylvania, it was, a little sheltered and small, and here I am, like kind of getting thrown into like the bigger world, and it just taught me that there's, so much out there. And another thing when I was there, we for literacy classes, we read a lot of like existential literature, like
Uh-huh.
Camus. And I'm trying to. This is digging pretty far back in the files, Eric. But
That's okay.
a lot of things that they would say is like what a, how small we are in relation to the world,
Uh-huh.
and like how much is out there, and how much opportunity is out there. And I remember landing in France. And I was like, this doesn't look like Pennsylvania. Like this doesn't look like Pittsburgh. You know. So it really opened up my eyes to say, like, the world is such a vast, unique, amazing place with, so many opportunities. And I think that maybe really kind of planted a seed in me just to be more curious, and also, appreciation of what's available to people. And I think that's kind of always been at the backbone of, my career and all the changes I've done. It's just that, there isn't just one path for me to take. And every 5 years or so, I kind of start looking for another path.
You know,
um,
and I
but
share
yeah, it
that
definitely
with
shaped my philosophy.
I think I share that with you. I think some of the folks that I've actually talked to, if you listen to some of the other guests on the podcast, they're a lot like you and I. They went down a path and they something happened. There was a fork in the road of some sort. Maybe it was a brick wall, or it was a new opportunity came, or a restlessness. And I use restlessness because I kind of experience that myself sometimes. And I think that's a gift. I grew up at a time where, like, most people thought you started with a company right out of college, and you stayed with them until you
Yeah.
retired. And I
Yeah.
was listening to a podcast the other day where they said that the average, what's the generation after millennials, but or maybe it's millennials, that if you're staying in a job more than a few years, people start wondering about you. You know that you're
Right,
really
right.
not changing. So the idea of having the opportunity to be in a world where change is embraced and encouraged, and and that 5 year itch or restlessness or whatever it is actually, it's a positive and not seen as a negative. So
Yeah.
it's
I
great.
mean, I think 20 years ago, it probably would have been looked at a little differently. I know,
Yeah.
like, even my parents, my father worked at the University of Pittsburgh for 35 plus years.
Yeah.
And When he saw me changing careers occasionally, he always encouraged me to do what I wanted to do and whatever made me happy. But I do think a part of him was like, just stay put, dig your
Yeah.
heels in, grow
Yeah.
your pension, grow your 401k and retire. So I
Yeah.
think it made him a little anxious when I would jump around a little bit, but he never said no, and I'm grateful for that.
And I think that's the key is to have the support. Terry, my wife, my dad was like that too, but my dad didn't work for the same company. He kind of was an entrepreneur and started his own little business and stuff with no high school diploma. But Terry's always been my wife has always been supportive of these changes that we've experienced. And honestly, I think my life's richer because of that,
For sure.
and
Yeah.
yours
Think of all
yours
the
too.
experiences you've had, and other people don't have that.
Yeah, yeah. So, part of that, sometimes we talked about, those times where you have to transition. Sometimes they happen because there's a no, or there's a brick wall, or there's maybe it's a tragedy, maybe it's something. But from what you told me, there's been some times, I guess, in your life where you've had some no's where you thought you were going down a path, and it was like, yeah, this isn't it.
Yeah.
Anything that stands anything that stands out that you'd want to share?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. Having spent time in France, and then after high school, I went to Tulane University in New Orleans, and I studied international relations and French. I
Wow.
had a passion. Yeah, I had a passion, for languages and diplomacy. And
Hmm?
at that time, I thought I wanted to join the Foreign Service, be a Foreign Service officer. Um, so to do that, you have to pass the Foreign Service exam. It's a pretty lengthy process. And so when I was a senior in high school, I started thinking about, okay, I'm graduating. What am I going to do?
Hmm.
So I started studying for that exam. And I took the exam, and it's like a three-part process. One's like you go to a testing center and government center, and it's like a 2-hour test. It's like a lot of it's multiple choice, some free text about like, just the economy, U.S. history, geography, hundreds of
Sure.
questions.
Right.
Um, and I always did pretty well on that. And then I advanced to the second stage where you had to go and you had to write a couple essays about foreign policy. I advanced past that, and then I got to like the interview stage where you'd meet with some, interviewers for several hours, and they would drill you on everything. And I failed that the first time.
Oh no.
Um, yeah, and but I was like, all right, I'll try again. I was still pretty young. A lot of foreign service officers are a lot of times, mid-career and kind of change. And so I said, I'll do it again. And same thing happened. Went through that process, but didn't make it to the final round. And at that time, I was like, maybe I'll just kind of put this on the back burner and hold a little bit. And in the summers, I'd grown up working on a golf course close to my house because I'd always enjoyed golf, with my dad. And I'd work as a caddy or on the range, just picking up golf balls. And then I became really close with the director of golf at a really nice club called Lower Valley Golf Club outside of Pittsburgh. And he said to me, you love golf, members like you. Why don't you consider, taking my job like down the road, like be a
Oh
golf
wow.
professional? Yeah, I mean, long ways down the road, but
Sure,
like, why
sure,
don't you
sure,
become a
sure.
golf professional? I
Yeah.
could see you filling my shoes like 20 years down the road. I'm like, no, that sounds kind of interesting. So
Hmm.
for the PGA, the Professional Golfers Association, there's an apprenticeship program and there's an entry requirements. And the first thing you have to do is pass a player. So I decided at that time, hey, maybe this would be a better avenue. I love golf.
Yeah.
It makes me happy. Let's try this.
Huh.
Um, so I applied for that apprenticeship program, and the first step you have to do is pass a player's test, which means you have to play 36 holes. They have these like organized around the country throughout the year. And then you have to shoot below a certain score.
Hmm.
Um, and like it's usually you have to shoot like 75, 75 around there for 18 holes. And then So I started doing that. And, like I was a good golfer, but I wasn't a great golfer. On a good day, I would shoot 75. So I took the test, and this is a pretty good story of resilience. And I had lots of friends working in the industry. I was in Florida, and some of the people are really good golfers.
Yeah.
So I took the test, failed the first time. I missed it by like 4 or 5 strokes. I took the test 7 times. I passed it on my seventh, I think it was 7 times, maybe six, but I passed it my seventh time. And
Good
believe
for
me,
you.
there are many times through that I was like, maybe this isn't the path, but I just kept practicing. I would, after work, I would hit balls for hours. I would read about golf instruction and got some good instruction in Florida. And then finally passed it. And then I went through the program. It's like a 3-year program, and then became like a licensed golf professional, club professional. Big difference between, club pro and a touring pro like, Rory McIlroy, Tiger Woods. But
So what is
so I did that.
what is the big difference though? I'm because I'm not, I've played. I'm not good.
Yeah.
75 is what I usually play on 9 holes, not 18.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's a playing ability.
Oh,
Those
playing
tour
ability.
players
Okay, okay.
would shoot 62, 63 on a course where, we're shooting 75,
I gotcha.
80.
I gotcha.
Um, so they're actually playing golf for a living. As a golf club pro, you manage the golf shop, you manage the golf staff, you give lessons, you play with
Gotcha.
members. It's almost
Gotcha.
like a general manager kind of position at a golf club.
Gotcha. Okay.
Um,
Gotcha.
so I did. I got through the program, and then I landed some really nice positions. I'd work in Florida in the winter at Old Collier Golf Club, which is a beautiful golf course in
Yeah.
Naples. Then I would go up to Pennsylvania in the summer, and then eventually I just moved to Naples full time and worked year round at that club. And I did that. I think it was about 10 years.
Wow.
Um,
10 years.
before,
Wow.
yeah, as a pro before I made my next move.
Well, before we go to the next move, that's really cool. There's things I heard you say that I want to kind of touch on. One, what was the golf? Well, we try to not to mention names. What was the first name of the golf pro that first saw a gift in you? What was his first name?
Chris,
Chris.
yeah.
So here's the thing that I see a common thread in all and my own life and others that I've talked to is there's always been someone, or maybe there's been multiple people, and this we're just on golf right now. We're not in the healthcare industry and what you're doing now, but there's always been someone who saw gifts in me, like Chris saw in you, that I couldn't see in
Mhm.
myself, and took a risk in saying to you, you could do this. And
Yeah,
and there's not not everybody has someone saying you can do this in their lives, and that is so important. We do it with our children,
yeah,
but
yeah, and especially after having failed the tests multiple times, he kept encouraging me. He's like, "You can do this. Like, you're so close." So he
oh
was definitely
wow,
he was definitely a mentor, and he was also an inspiration because he had a great job. He was a great golfer, and I admired him in a way. I wanted to be like him. So he was definitely a driving force. And I had a similar relationship when I moved to Florida. The pro there, Steve, was phenomenal as well. So I was really fortunate that I had great mentors and leaders when I was in the industry.
and the thing too that I hear, and I heard you say this, is that and said this to Paul. You remember Paul Scott? And I said to Paul, I said, I don't know if you heard his podcast, but I said, Paul, this stuff doesn't fall from the sky. I heard you say I had to practice and practice and practice.
Mhm.
It's
Mhm.
you have to have someone cheering for you, coaching you, mentoring you. That's essential. But you have to you have to get your hands dirty. You have to do the hard work. You have to do the hard
Yeah,
work.
it's so true. And I think of several examples in life, and I like to think of myself as reasonably smart and somewhat athletic, but by no means do I excel in really either domain, but I feel like what I've always been able to do in life, and I think a lot of it comes down to pride, is just that I'm willing to put in the hours and the work to succeed.
Yeah.
Um, whether that's at work or in sports. One thing I don't think I mentioned to you before, Eric, but like I got into triathlons and like endurance kind of running and cycling as a hobby through a lot of this. And, I always wanted to run a marathon. And, I was never really a runner, but I set out a plan and I just worked hard, overcame lots of injuries and frustration. But I feel like as an individual, I've always been kind of goal oriented.
Yeah.
And I set a goal, whether it's learning to fly, to be a golf pro, and I just don't stop until I accomplish it. And, I realize that I may not be naturally gifted in any of these things, but if I put in the time and work, I've been able to succeed. Um, and that's a lesson that, my son is really into soccer, and he reminds me a lot of me in that he's kind of like a decent soccer player.
Yeah.
He's not, he's got buddies who are just amazing. And sometimes he gets a little frustrated. He may not make the same team they do, but I've always told him like, you're not going to be the best player. You're not going to have the best skills, but just outwork them, practice, be a good team player, be a leader, and you'll be successful. And like right now, he's thriving in soccer. He's starting not to listen to me as much as he used to. Now that he's 11.
He's growing up.
Yeah, but I coach his soccer team, and I mean, there's nothing I enjoy more than, working with those kids and seeing them grow and develop.
And so you're taking those lessons of having someone coach, and you're coaching, and you're doing it. You're passing on, yeah, and inspiring others, and teaching and coaching soccer. That's amazing. One of the things that I was sitting here thinking about as we were talking is how in life, um, um, this idea of, I'm going to use the word restlessness. I think you use the 5-year itch. We'll use that interchangeably.
Yeah,
Restlessness, but I think restlessness sounds negative. Maybe it's maybe let me ask you this question. This is where it's leading to do you like to learn new things?
yes, yes, yes. I really do. I think it's loving to learn and also just being really curious.
Yeah.
Um, I think that's what's helped me, a lot, especially in work. Um, you know, Changing careers several times. It's just, especially in my industry now, I work in clinical trials and um, I'm just always curious to learn about disease states and like how we can serve our clients by, creating software to help them with their clinical trials. So, yeah, I love to learn, whether it's, I remember getting my private pilot's license, like reading, that test prep book. Like I wanted to ace that test. I think I missed one, but, I love learning it.
That was you. Yeah, I know. You probably missed one.
But I love learning. I think it's so exhilarating, and I feel like I'm a lifelong learner. I probably slowed down a little bit now, but yeah, it's exciting.
Yeah, it to me, that's me. I mean, I was doing the flying, and I still want to do some flying. We talked about that earlier, but the idea of um, teaching someone, whether you have the title teacher or not, if you're working with a team, you're constantly passing information along. I told someone the other day, and I think I hear it in golf. I hear it in a lot of skills. I see it in the work that I was doing as a priest. Is the early days of the master and the craftsman that were working, like the old stonemasons or carpenters, or back in the day when they had electricians, that you had the master plumber, and then you had the apprentice. I think that passing on of what we've learned and gained, um, is still something that exists today. It exists differently, but you know, you I've recognized the people that were the masters at the things that they did, that actually took me on as an apprentice and taught me how to do things. And you sound like you've had those folks in your life as well.
Yeah, no, I've been fortunate to have great masters, and I lead a team now of 11 project managers in my company, and I love coaching them and guiding them. But I will say the ones that are most successful are the ones that are curious and want to learn.
Yeah.
The ones that really ask the questions and dive in. Some do well, but they just kind of do their job. But the ones who excel are the ones like, why does this work this way? Why are we doing this? And I love those individuals.
And that's a good segue there to talk a little bit about. So you went from golf, you were a golf pro in Naples for 10 years. Um, Talk a little bit about the transition to what was next. There was a 5-year itch
Yeah.
somewhere in it. What was next after that? After golfing in Naples?
Yeah. So living in Naples, Florida, that's when there was kind of that housing boom. Um, so I'd been a golf pro for 10 years and I enjoyed it, but I felt like one of the challenges in the golf industry is there are very few like really good jobs. And the ones that are there, it's usually those top players. And I just didn't know if it was going to be lifelong. So I decided to go back to Florida Gulf Coast University and get my MBA part-time while working at the golf club. And while there, I met an individual who was a executive at WCI, the home builder,
Oh yeah, yeah.
and they were really growing their marketing department. And we got along well, and I enjoyed marketing in my MBA, curriculum. And he's like, do you want to try something different? We're really hiring. I think you'd be a good fit for this department. So I went and met with some folks and got a really nice offer and decided, you know what? Now might be a good time to make a change. Don't have a family, still relatively young. So I decided to do that. It was a hard decision because, I was very passionate about golf and felt like it was somewhat part of my identity
Hmm.
at that point. So I did I made the change. I think there were times when I may have regretted it, but I made the change and dove in. I enjoyed it for a few years, and things were great for 2 years. And all of a sudden, the market crashed, and the housing market was devastated in Florida, and they had mass layoffs. And then I was a casualty of that. So it was kind of short-lived, but gained a lot from that experience as well.
WCI, that was a builder, right? A home
Yeah,
builder. And you were
exactly.
working in the marketing department with a fresh MBA. I didn't know that about. I didn't know until you shared a little
Yeah.
bit of that with me. That's really cool. That's bold to leave something that you loved and you're good at, and you're comfortable with. And you dropped out. That's an amazing dropping out of your comfort zone to go do something totally different.
Yeah, it really was. And, it was a tough decision, but I'm glad I did it. I met some great people. I learned a new skill set.
Yeah.
And, they paid for my MBA then. So it all worked out well, but it was pretty short-lived.
So the market crash. I know that was probably prior to 2010, probably 2008,
Yeah, eight
2009
or
timeframe.
nine. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember that. That's about the same time I went to seminary. Uh,
Yeah.
yeah, the market crashed, and I go off
Yeah. Smart. You're smart.
to go into an industry that is recession proof. It wasn't really an
Mhm.
industry, but we'll leave that there anyway. So, what happened after that? So you had fresh MBA, some really great marketing experience. What was the next
Yeah.
transition?
So, yeah, so I was without a job and I had actually just gotten married too. My wife Ann, who is a teacher in Florida. And
Okay, awesome.
so, yeah, at that time I was kind of thinking, all right, what's next? As part of that MBA program, I told you I met someone at WCI, but I also met a physician, a pediatrician in Naples, who we became, close friends. And I told her about my situation, and she said, have you ever thought of like pharmaceutical biotech sales? I work with reps all the time, and you seem, pretty personable. I think you would enjoy, working with physicians. And I'm like, oh, maybe. It wasn't something I really thought about. But then I kind of, jogged my memory, and I had some friends from back home who had been working in the industry for like Big Pharma, Lilly, or somebody, GSK, for a long time, and they really enjoyed it. There's definitely some big perks working in the industry, freedom, get a car, and I was young and they paid pretty well, and so I talked to them, and they're like, yeah, if you can get an opportunity, like jump on it.
Sure.
Um, so that physician that I met, helped me network with some of her reps who knew of open positions, et cetera. So I was fortunate to land a position with Santa Fe Pasteur, and they make vaccines like pediatric vaccines, flu
Mhm.
vaccine. So I got that job in the Naples territory where I would call on hospital systems and work with physicians and big pharmacy buyers. It was nice because they all needed vaccines. It's not like I was selling something that they didn't need, but it was
Right.
really differentiating between me and my competitor, another big company. So it was really just like building relationships, good customer service, and
Sure.
I didn't think of myself as really like as a salesman. I'm not someone that can really push. I don't like to make people really uncomfortable or the hard close, but I just developed relationships and I felt, they trusted me, so they bought from me and it went really well. For 5 years or so, I really enjoyed doing
Wow.
it. And yeah, it was good. It was a good lifestyle for my wife and and I enjoyed it for a good 5 years. And then, big shift after that, if you want me to go to
Oh, please, yeah. This is your story, man. I love it. I'm just sitting here taking it in. It's awesome.
that. So, at that time, my wife and I had been living in Florida for 12, 13 years, and we were both from Pittsburgh, and we really enjoyed Florida, but it wasn't home. And, we wanted to start a family. Both of our parents, our siblings were up in Pittsburgh. Cost of living was really nice in Pittsburgh. We knew schools were nice. So we were like, you know what? Maybe now's the time to move back and start a family. Um, so my wife, who was a teacher, always wanted to be a therapist, a social worker.
Oh,
And
wow.
she applied to University of Pittsburgh and got in. Um, so I didn't want to leave without having a job in Pittsburgh.
Right.
So my wife actually moved back and we kind of saw each other long distance for 9 months or so.
Hmm.
And then that time, I think it was 2011-ish or so, you know, my wife and my wife came back to visit and she's like, guess what? I'm pregnant. I'm like, okay, it's great. What am I going to do? I can't live in Florida anymore. So we were starting a family. So I really got aggressive then to find a position back in Pittsburgh. And so I was thinking, all right, what am I going to do? I wanted to transfer with Santa Fe because I really liked the company.
Yeah.
It's a good job. And I tried to do that for several months, but a territory wasn't open in Pittsburgh. They had a tenured rep in the area, so I didn't have that option. And my twin sister was working at Deloitte, consulting in a recruiting role, like a
Uh-huh.
college recruiter.
Uh-huh.
Um, and she said, like we're hiring right now. Like you could use your marketing skills, your sales skills. Like that's what recruiting is. Like you're
Wow.
selling Deloitte college kids to come. So I was like, really? You think that would work? And she said, let's try it. So I started interviewing at Deloitte Consulting and fortunately was offered a position. And my wife, was in Pittsburgh and I got the position and moved up right away. And we, got a little house outside of Pittsburgh and I started working and my daughter Kate was born, 5 months later and we've been here ever since.
Oh my gosh. So let me see if I got this right. So you go from living in France, uh,
Yeah.
uh, trying to be a foreign service officer. That didn't work out for you, uh, but you shifted and you were a golf pro, and you did that for a while. And then there was an opportunity to do marketing with a builder. Then the market crashed, brick wall, but you shifted. And then you got the position in medical sales or medical social brand support. Wasn't really sales, is
Yeah.
that's probably yeah, developing relationships.
Yeah.
And then you became a
Yeah.
recruiter for Deloitte. That's amazing.
Yeah.
So talk about
Yes. I
that. What
mean,
was
I
that
look
like?
back
What was that like?
right. It
You,
was
you were saying
nice. I
you
mean,
you were saying
Deloitte's a
I
great
interrupted you.
company.
You were saying you look back at it and what? I
No,
didn't mean to interrupt.
Well, yeah, when I kind of like write down chronologically everything I'm done, I'm like, geez, that's a lot of different, that's a lot of moves. Um,
But they all
but
build on each
they've
other.
all built on each other. Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. Like all the skills were transferable, and I just kind of, built on them. And it was important to be able to, tell my story in all these on these interviews because, companies do say like, well, why? Like, every 5 years you're changing kind of careers and jobs. Um, but it all built on each other. And Deloitte was great. I worked there for a while. Um, that's an intense workplace. Very type A. The people
Hmm.
who work there are generally like very, very driven, very smart. But it taught me a lot. It taught me a lot about like professionalism. I remember like first developing like presentations and stuff, and I thought they were great, and then the principal would come in and just like rip it apart,
Oh,
like he would notice anything that was off center, like it had to be perfect.
oh
So it
my.
was a little like type A for me at first, but I got used to it and it made me really better. Like I look back, like in my current job now, when I work with my team and they send me stuff, I'm like, okay, this is good, but this is how we make it better. I think Deloitte taught me that.
Yeah.
But it was great because I went to local universities and recruited students. So I formed a lot of great relationships. And I loved helping students find their like next career. And, Deloitte's a great place for a new graduate to join. It's a great opportunity. And we were fortunate that it was highly sought after. So,
Yeah.
again, it wasn't like I was really trying to sell them so much on it, but just trying to find the best of the best. Um, so it was a really nice experience. And again, I did that for about 5 years. And then, um,
And here comes the itch.
yeah, here goes the itch. And I would have stayed there actually, but uh, as part of my job, I worked closely with Carnegie Mellon University in Pittsburgh, and I had a really good relationship with the director of student affairs at Carnegie Mellon. And one day he said, "I'm looking to hire a director of employer relations," which is kind of just like hopping the fence. So in this
Oh
case,
wow.
the person at Carnegie Mellon's looking is trying to attract companies like Deloitte, you know, big pharma, banks to come recruit the students. So I kind of said, yeah, like I had a young family at that point. We had a son named Henry in 2014. And I was like, Deloitte's great, but it's a lot of hours. It's lots of travel, academia historically, a little slower pace. So he said, I would love for you to come work with me. He was another kind of a role model, mentor. I really admired him. So I went and worked. I decided to make the change, and I worked for him for I don't know 4 years or so, and really enjoyed it. It was a good experience. It was kind of in a way, somewhat of a recharge, reset.
Yeah.
But I enjoyed it. I still have a really good relationship with him.
It's interesting. I said this to someone, and I heard this on a show that I was watching the other day that you may find yourself doing a particular job or a particular task, um, and it may not be where you want to be. Um, but
Mhm.
if you can find yourself in that and look at it as if you're going back to college or you're going into an educational situation, and I'm looking at this time as I'm learning something, um, rather than this is the end all be all. That
Yeah,
that was helpful for me.
I think that's a great perspective, and that's something I tell to my team a lot right now, especially when when times are tough. And I think to myself, like, although I hope I'm in my last job, I may not be, but nothing's forever.
True.
When things do get tough, I always say, whether this is just a passing moment where I have a tough client that's upset, like next week, 2 weeks from now, I won't even remember it. Or even if, I'm not happy in the job, I think a lot of people get depressed or kind of anxious and be like, all right, like I'm stuck. This is what I'm going to do the rest of my life. It's kind of depressing, but I've learned to kind of change my thinking that nothing is forever, and if this doesn't work out, something else will come available, and that's helped me mentally a lot of times.
Yeah, and you have you have, I think there's a lot of skill sets that you've developed over the years just listening to the more details of your story. But I think one of the skill sets that maybe you and I share is that um, um, when change comes, either unexpected or a new opportunity comes, we're not afraid, or at least I'm becoming where I'm not afraid to take a bold move because there's something to learn. There's a new opportunity, and I can meet new people, and maybe in some way I can make a contribution that's different than what I'm doing now.
Yeah. Yeah.
A,
No,
a,
for
fr-
sure.
a friend of mine told me, she said, when I was thinking about going back into aviation, when I had like three or four people call me up and say, when are you coming back? I told my friend about this, and they said, "Well, have you told anybody?" Oh no, before even they were calling me, before people were calling me to tell me that, I was thinking about, hey, how do I get it back into aviation before I get too old to do it? Because if I wait till I'm 65, I may not be able to do it. I retire at 65 and do it. And my friend said, "Well, have you told anybody?" And I went, "What? Have you told any of your friends that you want to go back into aviation?" I went, "No, that's my little dream." And they go, "Nothing's going to happen until you tell someone." And
Yeah.
it was soon after I did that, people people came.
Opportunities came available. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I just think it's interesting.
Yeah.
So tell us a little bit about you're talking about you're in your position now, and you've touched a little bit about that. So you don't have to mention your company or anything, company name, but what are you doing now, and
Yeah.
what's giving you joy in what you're doing now?
Yeah. So currently, so I was at CMU for 3, 4 years, and then it was a great experience. But I had some concerns. One, uh, I didn't feel as though I was really being pushed, and I wanted a little bit more of a challenge. I'd become somewhat complacent, I think, and I felt like I needed to do a little bit more. And also the young family and financial concerns. I needed to find something that was a little better for my family. Um, so, looking back on all my experiences, I'd really enjoyed, science part of working in pharma. I enjoyed marketing, but I also really enjoyed like project work, managing projects. At CMU, I did a lot of like project management stuff. So there's a company, it's called Clario, and what they do is we provide software solutions for pharma, biotech for their clinical trials. So if a pharma company, let's just say GSK, has a cancer drug, they have a protocol, a study they're following to develop and test this drug. They come to us and say, hey, we need to test this drug. We need you to develop a software solution to collect the data so then we can take that data to the FDA to get drug approval. Um,
Oh,
so I don't have a technical background. I'm not an engineer. I don't know how to code or develop, but they were looking for project managers to come lead these studies with the clients. So I found it very interesting. So I applied for that role, got the position, started as like a project manager, and I did that for a couple of years, and then was promoted to manager. And I focus on respiratory trials. So right now I have a team of 10 individuals who manage all our clients, all their clinical trials. I oversee them. I coach, develop them. I'm involved with some part of the sales process for new clients, but
wow.
it's probably the hardest job I've ever had, just because
Yeah,
there's a technical aspect to it that's somewhat hard to learn. The clients are very hard, demanding. It's a race to market. They're competing
yeah,
to get their drugs first to market, so everything needs to be done yesterday, and it's
right.
heavily regulated, so there can't be any errors, mistakes. But I feel like it's really kind of part of what excites me about it is not only is it just super challenging and hard, like it tests me every day,
Yeah,
but also it's kind of mission driven. Like I love the fact that we'll work with a company, they'll get a drug approved, and it could be life saving for lots of people. So on those hard days, it's definitely what gets me up and motivates me. And my wife is in a clinical trial right now up in Boston. It's not like a life-threatening kind of trial, but it's a great trial that's really, improved her quality of life. So
right.
knowing that, I play a small part in that has been very, rewarding and exciting. So I love the industry. the job is hard and
Yeah.
it's stressful, but it's, I just turned 50, Eric, a month ago. So, I hope to work for another 15 years or so, but I know I've made lots of changes over the years, but this is I feel like I've kind of landed
Yeah.
where I want to be. Maybe not necessarily with this company forever, but I do love the industry and the space and the contributions that I make. So I'm pretty confident that I'll be here for the duration.
No, no more 5-year itch, maybe.
No, the itch is wearing off.
But it's just, it happens as we get older. We start learning the
Uh,
salve to put on the itch to make it go away.
yeah, I think I finally have.
And here's what I hear is I hear in your voice joy, and the fact that you're mentoring and coaching other people. I hear I hear that you're challenged in new ways, so you're learning something every day, and you love the mission. You're actually changing people's lives for the better. So,
Yeah,
all that. And then the one thing that I think I heard too was that um, that um, you're doing something that's just like you said, making a difference in people's lives. Um, but it's not easy, and it seems like part of the change comes when things you get bored. That's been my
yeah.
background.
Oh, for sure. Yeah,
Yeah,
no doubt.
yeah,
I get bored easily,
yeah,
but
yeah.
not
I'm
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 not bored
with you.
now.
Well, and I think that's natural learners. We learn something, we master it. Now we got to go. We give me something else to master.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
There's not enough cooking, sewing, or other modeling things that I can do or making podcasts for whatever
Right.
reason I'm doing
Yeah, I mean,
that.
you're always reinventing and doing something new.
Yeah,
It's cool.
absolutely. So, all this change, and that's so good to hear, and the fact that you've kind of landed in something that that you love, and you have a purpose, and you satiate your curiosity, and but there's been a lot of times where you've faced a lot of uncertainty, and probably even now, you've mastered the work you're doing now, but there's still some uncertainty in that. So how have you, when you face uncertainty, how have you kind of dealt with that?
Yeah, I think when I'm faced with uncertainty, and I get it every day at work, it's such an ambiguous environment that I work in. I think all I can do is just drive to try to find answers and solutions
Yeah,
and know that I may not find them. But as long as I'm like working towards them, it helps mitigate the stress or, the anxiety that comes with it. But I also think as I've grown older and I've had more experiences, like I'm more accepting of uncertainty. I
yeah,
think at a younger age, I wouldn't feel as comfortable as I do now. But I just think, it's uncertainty is part of life, and it's something that, in a way, it makes us uncomfortable, but we just kind of have to embrace it and
yeah.
know that, just keep moving forward, keep trying to find solutions and answers, and as long as you're doing that, that's all you can do, and life will just kind of unfold as it does.
Yeah, and I'm thinking about we're kind of at that point where we're starting to transition a little bit. And thank you for sharing your wonderful story and things that I missed. I wished I'd been able to share even more, knowing some of the things that you've done and just cheering you on. But I guess I have anyway. My old flight student. But
Of
as
course.
we're talking about the people that are out there maybe listening that's thinking about reinvention, I think one of the things I've heard you is that you need to learn to embrace the 5-year itch or the restlessness and see it as growth and not failure. Um, you know, um, and that's good advice I think for people that are kind of mid or late career professionals who are stuck and restless and
Yeah.
trying to figure out what's next. But it, if you could find a common thread that might be able to be some advice for someone that's in that place, that were there things or how did you know that it was time to make a change other than the obvious industry change?
Yeah. I just felt like, when you start asking yourself, like, is this where I want to be? Is this it? Like, you kind of get that gut feeling. Things start churning in your head when you start thinking, like, what else is out there? What else should I be doing? I think, is the biggest indicator. And, I think what I say to myself now is like, where would I be if I didn't do that? If I
Yeah.
didn't make changes, if I just stayed the course, it's kind of boring.
Yeah. Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I mean, not that it was easy, but at the same time, I think I would have lots of regret if I didn't try new things and do something different, as I get older. But for me, I don't know, it's just a sense, I would be at work and be like, I just don't think this is my landing place. And
Yeah.
I think once you start getting some of those thoughts in your head, it's a time to really explore and see what else is out there and take a leap of faith, like it'll
And
work
and
out.
and maybe share it with someone, you know.
Yeah, yeah, for
Yeah.
sure.
Yeah. Maybe that mentor might show up.
Yeah.
Um, so at your core, the things that you've done, if you were going to kind of summarize that, the changes, the things that you've learned, those things, what has that taught you about who you are at your core?
Um, I think it's taught me that, I have an adventurous spirit and that, I have the courage to make change and try new things. Um, and that's, again, it just comes back to a lot of like, I don't want to live my life thinking, what if I had, what if I had done that?
Yeah.
So I feel like at the end of the day, I'll be able to say, hey, I tried different things. I took the risk and I took the challenge. And, I'm proud of that. And it's something
Yeah.
that I'll pass on to my kids. I want them to be happy, do what they want to do, but I'll also encourage them to, keep making changes, keep growing and developing.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. I think I shared with you early on when I decided to retire early from ministry and go back into aviation because I've spent all my life wanting to do it and being afraid. Fears kept me from doing it.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
and then the opportunity came and I just said I don't want to be the 80, 90-year-old man sitting on the front porch going, well, I could have, but I
right,
didn't because I
exactly.
was
Right.
afraid.
Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah.
I
I
love it.
won't have that regret.
All right. So we're going to come to a close here in a minute, but I have a couple quick questions I'll ask you. These are the something new I want to try. It's called the quick personal touch points.
Okay.
I think I know what the answer to this is, but can you name a favorite place that you visited before?
Well, obviously France, one of the top of the list. I also love going out west skiing, the mountains. I love skiing. Growing up, my mother was a travel agent, so we traveled a decent amount. I love Bermuda.
Oh yeah.
I love going to Florida, the beaches. My kids love the beach, just sitting on the beach. Um, but
Uh,
skiing
uh,
in the French Alps was probably a highlight.
oh my
Um,
gosh.
when I was living in France, we took a train down to the Alps and to Spain and to Italy. So yeah, I've been fortunate, and visited some neat places.
Yeah. Remind me to tell you the story about flying the Phenom to Bermuda once, but that's another story for another podcast.
Okay.
A mentor who has shaped you.
Early on, definitely the golf pros that I worked for. My cousin at the Blue Angels, I always kind of admired him, his work ethic, professionalism. My father, he was worked hard every day, 35 years, always provided for us as a family. Always admired his work ethic and he would do anything for us kids. So, probably those three.
Awesome. A book or quote that's influenced you.
I'm trying to remember exactly what the quote is, but just to kind of paraphrase it, it's F. Scott Fitzgerald who said, "The intelligent person is a person who can hold two opposing views and still function." So,
Oh yeah.
I love the fact that, especially in today's political environment, we may disagree with people, but what I just don't like is people who are so I don't know what the right word is, but think one
In,
way and never
yeah.
even consider other people's views. So I like
Yeah.
people who have their views, but can say, okay, I see how you get that, but I don't agree with you. But
Right.
so yeah, just being able to think on kind of both sides of the fence.
Yeah. I like that. I'm with you. I'll not forget that one. What is a moment that you're most proud of?
Ooh.
That's a good one, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, I talked about, persevering and passing that golf test. I remember once I finally passed it, calling my parents and crying that, I'd finally done it
Oh,
and how proud they were. So that was cool. Learning to fly, like I never thought I would, fly solo when you got out of that plane and had the confidence in me to fly. Like that was a huge accomplishment. Getting married, having two wonderful kids. I've been very fortunate. Lots of great, you know, accomplishments and memories that I'm proud of for sure.
oh, that's wonderful. Thanks for sharing all that, my friend. So, before we come to a close, this is the last question I ask everybody that I have on the podcast, and this one's a good one. If you were sitting in a coffee shop or having lunch with someone who's facing a major change in their life, they're considering a reinvention or taking a huge risk, kind of like you've done and I've done, what would you tell them?
Tell them now's the time. The longer you wait, the harder it will get. And just to trust your gut and take the risk and, don't be afraid. The change you want to make may not work out, but something else will. And, it's better just to do it than to regret not having tried.
Oh, I love it. I love it. Now's the time. Trust your gut.
Yeah,
I love it.
right.
Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome. McKenna, we have got to not let 20 years pass
Yeah,
before we
for
have
sure.
another conversation because I'm going to be 80 years old and I won't even know how to use the internet. My friend, what a joy. It's like I'm going back to 2002 spending some time with you, but you've
Great
grown so
memories.
much.
Yeah,
You are you're yes sir, and you're quite an inspiration to me, and I want to thank you for taking some time to talk with me. I really
well,
appreciate it.
thank you. You've been a great role model, mentor, friend. So appreciate you very much.
Always, always. And we will talk again too. So,
Let's do it.
dear listeners, I want to thank you for being a part of Never Too Late, Real Stories of Reinvention, and being with us tonight with my dear friend McKenna Houston, someone who has actually taken a risk, gone out, done new things. He calls it the 5-year edge, but I think it's an internal part of who he is to go out there and be a lifelong learner. And I'm just grateful for him and his inspiration. McKenna, thank you again for being with us. Dear listeners, we have a podcast every 2 weeks. Please join us on Spotify. We're on iHeartRadio, Apple, iTunes podcast, and we even place these videos on YouTube. So be with us again. We'll see you in a couple weeks. Thanks again for listening to Never Too Late.